So I was in Algeria last week, and it's very difficult to ignore the escalating diplomatic tension between France and Algeria. It's all over the map, it's everywhere in the news on both sides of the Mediterranean. Both sides seem to be fired up, with the right-wing hardliners in France essentially coalescing in favor of more anti-Algerian sentiments, while the Algerian government's uncompromising stance against France is getting tremendous popular support. In April 2025, the two nations found themselves once again mired in what may be one of their most intense confrontations diplomatically between the two since Algeria's independence in 1962. The two countries have so many divergent positions on a number of topics and a lot of issues. But the most recent rupture was ignited by the public arrest in France of an Algerian consular officer accused of involvement in a plot to kidnap a political dissident. Setting aside this episode, the two countries are facing a deeper web of grievances, a great deal of mistrust, and certainly a lot of unresolved tensions given their shared tumultuous history and evolving geopolitics. Now, without getting into the history of these tensions and this relationship, well, this week's diplomatic drama began when the French authorities, as I said, arrested and detained an agent of the Algerian consulate in Créteil. France says the arrest was linked to an investigation into the 2024 attempted kidnapping of Amir DZ, better known as Amir DZ or Amir DZ, who is a critic of the Algerian government who has been granted asylum in France. The French say the arrest was conducted in line with national judicial procedures. Clearly, the Algerian government sees it very differently, considering that the arrest involved the Ministry of the Interior, which is led by a man who they accuse of being a hardliner and whose views on issues related to Algeria are sometimes very controversial. The Algerian government says the arrest was a grave breach of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, arguing that the consular agent should have enjoyed protection from such treatment and hence the stress in the Algerian capital. Algeria called the arrest ostentatious, humiliating, and part of an orchestrated effort to sabotage improving relations between the two countries, end of quote. Now, in response to the arrest, Algeria expelled 12 French officials stationed at the French embassy and consulates across the country, most of whom were agents affiliated with France's Interior Ministry and working and specializing in such things as counterterrorism, immigration, and security cooperation. France, for its part, did not wait and made a similar decision, ordering the expulsion of 12 Algerian consular personnel. It also recalled its ambassador in Algiers, signaling a hardening of positions. While the feud with Algeria up until recently was driven by the French Interior Ministry, the recalling of the ambassador means that the Foreign Ministry and the Presidency have joined as participant in this diplomatic feud, claiming to act in defense of sovereignty, legality, and national interest. In France, several commentators argue that the right-wing hardliners are becoming more prominent in the Macron administration and in defining Macron's foreign policies. This latest incident comes just 2 weeks after a phone call between Presidents Abdelmadjid Tebboune of Algeria and Emmanuel Macron of France sought to lay the groundwork for repairing months of troubled relations. Now, this feud peaked last year when President Macron voiced support for Morocco's autonomy plan over the Western Sahara region, a position directly at odds with Algeria's stance in a major geopolitical sore point. Algeria then decided to withdraw its ambassador from Paris, and it was only through high-level engagement that both governments began to restore dialogue in early 2025. Now, that process of constructive engagement to diffuse tension is now being derailed. Algeria blames the escalation squarely on the French Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, who is a hardliner known for his tough positions on such things as immigration and national security. The Algerians say Retailleau has no respect for diplomatic norms and protocol and used the arrest as a means to essentially reignite hostilities for, and I'm quoting, theatrical provocation intended to undermine relations between the two states. It's true that Retailleau is a potential candidate for France's presidential election in 2027, and his position on Algeria are considered part of a way to get support from conservative voters comes election time. France, for its part, says that its judicial system operates independently from the executive branch and that the government cannot essentially meddle with the law. But the French presidency noted that Algeria's response was disproportionate and incomprehensible, adding that security cooperation between the two countries could suffer from the expulsion of the French agents. Now, how to interpret this diplomatic row is a bit tricky, I admit. On the one hand, the French Interior Ministry is largely accused of pursuing a security-first agenda that disregards diplomatic considerations. While in Algeria, some analysts suggest that factions in the government, including in the military, may be resistant to reconciliation with France. It's certainly the case that internal power dynamics in both nations are shaping foreign policy in ways that complicate any resolution. Setting aside these feuds and tensions, both nations acknowledge the strategic value of their relationship. After all, Algeria remains a key partner for France on a number of sectors, including obviously energy, but also migration control and counterterrorism in the Sahel. Now, France too holds significant economic and cultural influence in Algeria, and it is also home to a large Algerian diaspora. Eventually, the two governments have strong incentives to find a way back to the negotiating table. In terms of the outlook, what lies ahead will likely depend on whether the two sides choose to view this crisis as a red line or a regrettable misstep. One most likely possible scenario is that tension will continue to dominate, with both sides hardening positions and reducing cooperation across various sectors. Remember, France is headed towards presidential election in 2027. And the hard right movement needs these sorts of tensions to fuel its campaigns. Remember also that in Algeria, the government's anti-France position is getting tremendous popular support. And so these two factors alone suggest that we're going to experience a protracted crisis. Another path could involve a quiet sort of de-escalation phase. There are so many French and Algerian officials and personalities that want to see the end of this crisis, and we believe that discreet negotiations aimed at releasing the detained Algerian agent, or transferring jurisdiction at least, in exchange for a restoration of diplomatic presence and a change in tone, could be what would trigger a de-escalation. For now, though, we do not see a full strategic reset given the political atmosphere in both countries. There is no political will to rise above immediate provocations and to reframe the bilateral relationship around common interests. And so, as the situation remains volatile, what began as a judicial matter has obviously escalated into a diplomatic clash over such things as sovereignty, legitimacy, and mutual respect. If the recent past is any guide, both France and Algeria may eventually return to dialogue, but not before this episode leaves yet another scar on a complex and often troubled relationship.